Welcome back. It's still Rise and Shine on your favorite TV, Spectrum TV.
And of course, we've been joined on set by a political affairs analyst in the person of Victor Nomo, who will be joining us in this conversation as to weekend's declaration of interest to join the presidential race under the People's Democratic Party. It's quite a breaking news. A lot of persons say they saw this coming. However, Victor Nomo, great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right. Did you also see this coming?
Yeah, I saw it coming.
Why?
When we started, what you notice about politicians is their attitude towards political party structure. So when you see a politician who over time wants to take charge of the political structure, wants to control the structure of the party, what he's trying to do, it means at that particular point, you should sense he's ambitious. So like Wike, at a point he was falling out with which is Secondus, a long-time friend and a brother. And probably because Secondo was playing into some people's hand up there in the north. I think that wouldn't be for television. When he noticed that, he started putting the heat on Secondus and successfully got him out of it. There's no two ways about that. He was doing that to ensure that he has the structure of the party in his hands. And when that happened, you can't just be interested in the structure of the party if you have no intention to run for a higher office. And I never expected him to run for the presidency.
But he could have been doing that and maybe positioning himself to be kingmaker other than to run. Don't you think so?
Oh, I don't think in Nigeria politics, I've not really seen kingmaker. I think the only kingmaker that was left has also thrown himself into the race for presidency. So the issue of being a kingmaker simply means sustainably over time, you don't take charge, you don't participate you don't seek for political offices. All you do is just to create environment for politicians to run, and politicians that will, in ideal situation, represent your party very well. But sometimes in our country, I think it's the other way around. A politician who will, feather your nest.
Well, I must say, talking about kingmakers here in Nigeria, it seems, it looks like people who should be kingmakers, maybe persons who have had experiences over and over and over again, still want to run back to the same position instead of being kingmakers, like he said.
Well, in any case, I don't see that it is not, I would say it's not ethical or it's unconstitutional for a kingmaker to seek for a political office. It could come as a result of dissatisfaction from people you've brought to office before. If you send a child to go get the water and each time the water drops on you, if you feel we are a better person to go get it
myself,
you do it.
What's an analogy? What's an analogy? But do you think he's contesting because he actually do not want Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to have a chance, because it seems to be more of a conflict between the North and the South in terms of which geopolitical zone the presidential ticket of the People's Democratic Party.
Well, naturally. See, the problem with this country is that people shut off morality from the way they practice politics. Okay. Ordinarily, we shouldn't be talking about zoning. Zoning has nothing to do with political party. Even though PDP actually, when it started, it was a sympathy zoning. That was exactly what happened. Because after what
the Abiola
saga, there was a need. The agitation by NADECO was so much, the heat was so much from the southwest. They had structured their political system in such a way that the system got so heat up. And the only way to pacify them was to bring a familiar face from the southwest who played the northern games. And I can't say if he actually played the northern game. So that was how it all started. So going by that, it became sort of a political culture. So whether you are in APC, like I always say, to me, APC, PDP, to me, it's just like describing a dozen and 12. Because you find this man migrating to here, so you can't say it's a party structure and ideology. So to that extent, since they do not have any clear-cut ideology, the zoning should be a regional thing. So presently, I think power should come to the south, and specifically, power should come to the southeast.
Okay, but staying on zoning, would you support zoning become a component of the constitution? Would you support
Well,
it?
zoning is not about zoning. Zoning is so wide. You don't know. We also have a generational zoning. Are you aware of that? Okay. If you are zoning in politics, you also try to zone it away from people who has held power over time. You also try to zone it to the youth. You also try. So it's a wide spectrum of discussion.
Okay. I think let me try to define it here so we don't make it too ambiguous and too broad.
Yes.
You know, before you came in, we touched this issue a bit, and then I mentioned Switzerland. I don't know if you're familiar with the kind of zoning in place in Switzerland. It takes into account the diversity of the people there to foster integration. And then they have a rotational presidency of 2 years, within which then the 6 groups get to clinch the office of president. And the ones who just finish their term cannot get it immediately after the other until it has gone round for everybody. So I think looking at Nigeria's diversity, let's look at diversity. Let's not look at age demographics, whether one is a youth or one is an elder. Because if you see, the thing that when we talk Nigeria integration, the first thing that comes to mind is sometimes ethnicity, not really region, you know. So there are some people who will tell you, I cannot vote for an Igbo president. There are people who will tell you, I cannot vote for a Northern president. There are some people who will tell you, Obasanjo had it, so I can't vote for a Southwestern president. So don't you think that if we make this constitutional, and then we go on to define terms and say, look, if the Southwest had it last time, okay, you can't have it immediately after until the 5 other geopolitical zones have gotten their turn. And if when it was with the Southwest, the person who got it was from Lagos, Lagos is excluded when next it comes. Would you support an effort like that becoming a component of the constitution?
Well, in Nigeria, I wouldn't like to liken. I look at our specific nature as a people. I wouldn't say because what is working in Britain, I should bring it to here, or what is working in America. After all, what we are having presently was brought in from America. So what I advocate for is a change in our attitude. Because if you really look at it, there's no difference between you and I. Whether I am Igbo or whether and we think this is coming up because serially we have had a system that hasn't worked for us. So what people now do is that because the system hasn't worked, people now begin to spew some sentiments. When money is shared in the National Assembly, nobody calls tribe. Dollar has no mark of any tribe. When they are doing that, you don't see them talk about tribe. It's only when they come to compete after gaining power, nobody talks about tribe. If you look between the last election, 2 years within that election before the transition period, nobody actually talked about tribe. The argument was on Boko Haram. Today, Boko Haram is dead. The argument was on insecurity. Today, nobody's talking about insecurity again. So when you look at all that, we are not actually sincere to ourselves. Then coming back to your question, any model that will bring integration and unity is an acceptable model anywhere in the world, in every sphere of human So you can't say what is good is not good. So it's good, but the thing is that will that work out? Coming back to what we're talking about, will the man, like in Akwa Ibom here, we have about 2 or 3 tribes, using that as a description. You have the Oron, you have the Bibio, you have the Anan. Then you see, when it comes to politics, nobody talks about those tribes again. You talk about senatorial district. Know too well that you have the Ibibios in Eke senatorial district, you have the Ibibios in Uyo senatorial district, you have the Ibibios there. So if this model you are talking about is brought into politics, it's to protect the minority.
Exactly.
So it will protect the minority. But what we actually need at this point is a sincerity of purpose. If you do that, if you know that one day you will leave office, if you are conscious of the fact that the power here is transient, you are not going to hold on to it forever, you will definitely have to behave yourself.
Okay, well,
so I support constitutional, even though I don't see it working, because those who have the population will always want to kill it.
Okay, now let's come back to what we're actually looking at. Wike declaring his presidential ambition. And he has made a very strong statement that if there is anybody who can remove APC from power, He is the person.
Well, like I said, if he talks about himself as a man, his achievement, I will already look at him and rate him. But if he talks about political party, I will just watch that away, because if I asked you now to tell me what ideology APC or PDP operates on, I tell you, you open several books, you won't find any of those ideologies. So when any Nigerian coming to tell me about bringing change on the strength of political party, APC or PDP, he's deceiving. He's just merely deceiving himself or trying to deceive others. Let me look at Wike. I have been a very close person to Wike, having grown up in Rumasi. And Chief Ezebo Yesom Wike has experience to run for that office. Having been a local government chairman of Obiakwa local government, and as at that time, he was the best local government chairman in terms of, I know how the council secretariat at used to be like, and as at the time he left office as a local government chairman, I know a lot of transformation he brought into there. But then he was a fighting chairman, because throughout his tenure, he was always fighting with his deputy, and at times it resulted in open brawl. So he carried that into, he enjoys a sort of relationship with Amechi, because, Amechi is like one person you can provoke over time. Even though he doesn't forgive you, he may not talk. So he could condone you, and you go on and on. So throughout their political journey, what they did till Amechi came back, became the governor. That's the story we all know. Then Nyesom Wike went to become a minister, and you see, at the point he was minister, he was, well, I don't know how, what, let me take the word. He was always in front. He was a warlike minister, and he wouldn't ordinarily condone certain things. And as a governor, you've also looked at his utterances. You look at his approach to certain issues. So the question now is Wike qualified to run for presidency? By academically, yes. In terms of capacity and experience, yes. But in terms of handling our diversity, I think he needs to work on that aspect of himself, because his emergence could engender so many things. He has to be less confrontational. So if you ask me if he has the emotional capacity and calmness to run a diverse country like Nigeria,
let me cut you there.
I'll just tell you he's below
Mr.
average.
Nomo, do you think Nigeria needs a gentleman? Because we've had gentleman personalities man the office. Goodluck Jonathan, former governor, former President Goodluck Jonathan was a gentleman. You would agree. And of course, President Muhammadu Buhari is really a quiet gentleman. And we have seen thus far Nigerians can judge. Do you think we still need a gentleman gentlemanic approach in approaching issues, Nigerian
well,
issues?
I don't know what you call gentleman. If
No, you just mentioned that Wike is.
No, I'm talking about. We don't need to be too physical in governance.
But he hasn't gone physical. He's just verbally outspoken.
That is physical. That is being very physical. He doesn't need to throw blows. When he wasn't in executive, when he wasn't in that position, you saw what happened: blocking of convoy, street brawl.
Are you talking about being politically correct?
Street brawls. So that is on the tough side of it. They're also talking about being a gentleman or having as a politician. Being a gentleman as a politician doesn't mean you won't talk. Being a gentleman as a politician simply means keeping to the oath of office, following consensuously, that is gentleman in office, the program of actions you've brought. If you implement those things, you are a gentleman because you have kept your agreement. So your nature as a person, it doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is this. Wike as a person in his period as a governor has really provoked the system in quotes, with utterances. Now, Wike ought to have been, naturally, Wike is an Igbo person. I'm sorry to use that.
He doesn't agree.
He said there's a difference between
No, it is not. You see, listen, you don't need to tell me that Ibibio man doesn't need to tell me he's an ethic man. Some of this disagreement is just to have political advantage.
You know,
ordinarily, as someone who grew up in Ikwere land, I know that all their mothers, including Wike and Amechi mothers, are all Igbo women from Nkwere and what do you call this?
But majority of Ikwere people do not agree they're Igbo.
They do not agree. But does that change the fact that when Wike is dressing to show his tradition, that he will use the red cap? That is his tradition. Does it not tally by dressing, by cultural implication? Are they not? Or is it when they wear, if you wear the other round cap, they are just taking that away, they are taking that, copying that from the Calabari people. So if you want to tell me about someone belonging to a place, you don't need to go to geography. You don't need to play the geography thing. You just go and tell me the cultural links between the people. So to me, it doesn't really matter whether you accept you are the Ikwere, you are Igbo, or you are not Igbo. But a typical Ikwere man is like the Igbo man.
Okay, regardless of his origin.
So I'm not saying they don't. It's like if you go and call Oron man now, Ibibio man, he'll be very angry with you.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean if he wants to say Dili Ekpo and Dili Angbo, that won't take anything away from.
Okay, let's move away from that now and look at other critical issues. Now, within the All Progressives Congress, the president said he wouldn't name his preferred aspirant or his preferred person for sex of being, being overtaken by other aspirants. Now, and suspicions are that person that the president actually prefers might be former Governor Amechi, who was a former governor in Rivers State as well. Now, if that assertion is right, or if it's anything to go by, Governor Yesun Wike is coming out still from Rivers State. Do you think that is a strategy, or maybe Governor Wike has a privileged information as to who the president would prefer and wants to counter that? Because looking at it critically, former Governor Amechi might not have a lot of votes coming from the south, like Governor Wike would do.
Well, I wouldn't say, you can't say governor would not have, Amechi will not have votes coming from the south.
Might not.
Listen, if anybody comes in Nigerian politics, if anybody emerges from Rivers State, Rivers people will vote in mass. Whether Wike or Amechi, because they want to keep power. There was an analysis I did on a television. I asked people when Wike and Amechi were exchanging words often. I asked them, "Are they fighting?" He said, "Yes." I said, "They are not fighting. That they are doing that for the interest of Ikwere people." Amechi is from Ikwere. He has fought to become a minister. Wike is coming from the Federal Executive Council as a minister to become governor. That what they are fighting is to the disadvantage of Ogoni people and Calabari people. So I don't see that as a fight. They are only taking that as, let me say, just a systematic approach to keep on to power without doing as if they are conspiring to keep such power. Because it's been to the advantage of their people.
So in other words, you're saying
people. So I don't call that a fight.
No, sorry, hold on. In other words, you're saying what we see between Amechi and Wike is just a mere conspiracy.
It's a cosmetic thing.
Just recently, where
have you seen? Listen, apart from where they were stopping on the road, apart from the issue they had where their convoy met, have you ever seen where this scam attacked this scam physically?
I don't know what you would. At what point you would agree that it's actually real and not gimmicks? Because we witnessed the last gubernatorial election in Rivers State, even when APC could not field a candidate. We saw what Amechi did with the candidate of, is it the AAC? For so many days, the Rivers election wasn't announced.
Sure.
So I don't know if it's until they burst out in a fisticuff at, let's say, Rumokoro, before you would agree
it becomes a big thing, the real thing.
The elites do not fight. It's the followers that do the fighting. They still meet and shake hands, and it doesn't mean they are at peace with each other. So
if you say that, the thing is this: anything you do, it should be to a disadvantage. It should have a negative. Fights do have negative impact on the people.
How about we see what you just said?
Impacts?
Okay, how about we look at it as the benefits the Ikwere people have derived from the fight between Wike and Amechi is an unintended consequence of their fight?
Well, I would say it's unintended. If I look at their relationship over time, even though I won't want to dwell on that, I wouldn't, looking at their relationship over years, I wouldn't say it's unintended. Because what they do is that each time, you see, this man is involved in this fight. What is the benefit of that fight to Ogoni people? The man used by Wike, Mark Nosabe, to prolong that fight with Amechi.
Okay.
What advantage is that to Ogoni people?
Okay, I think if you bring in the issue of Mark Nosabe to buttress the benefit to the Ogoni, I don't know if it's okay for us to dissect a bit why that fight has been on. I think the likes of Wike and Mark Nosabe realized, they saw themselves as political equals prior to when Amechi became governor.
Yes.
And then they felt like, why should one of us become the one who detects to us? In the case of Mark Nosabe, it's on record that Amechi went to his house to tell him not to run for Senate. So it became a personal thing for Mark Nosabe. Why should you be the one to tell me not to run? And why should you be the one to tell who should run or who shouldn't run? So I think that was a personal thing. And it made it very easy for Mark Nosabe to switch sides to the camp of Wike. So when you say to Wike's side, it doesn't have to be a written camp, okay? But it became very convenient. Of course, they say politics is interest. Okay, it became convenient for Mark Nosabe to be on the side of Wike because at this point they felt they have a common enemy. So I still hold that I think the benefits the Ikwere people, which I cannot really point to at this point, are receiving right now is just perhaps the unintended consequence of the fight between Amechi and Wike.
It's still a benefit.
Okay, but yeah, of course. But I'll still like us to still stay talking about Wike's presidential ambition. You know, he made this declaration in Makurdi, and over time we know he has had very close ties with the Benue governor. Wike has always been to the rescue. We know how it was with Benue State governor having defected from the APC to the PDP, and then he took a jab at two people, even though he didn't say their names. He said these two persons were some of the people responsible for why former President Goodluck Jonathan lost. They didn't stay with the party, they didn't help the party, and now they come back with a sense of entitlement, feeling that this should be theirs. Don't you think it's too early in his...
You come back to what I said about his attitude, his disposition to other people. You don't come into... If you want support, he would have been a good person. But at the point where you begin to believe that you are the best among the people, you at the point you have set rivalry. And as it stands now, Saraki wouldn't take that lightly. Let me come to that. Saraki wouldn't take that lightly. Remember, a few days ago, Saraki, Mohammed, that's Bauchi State governor, and Tambowal met. What was their reason? They wanted a consensus among three of them. At least one person should come on. That's to say, Saraki is ready to say, Tambowal, take on if I lose. Now, the other guy is playing a lone ranger, believing that whatever they do is up there. Now, Wike is now coming out too. You don't rule out Pius Ayim, who is coming out from the southeast, who believe that going by the right zoning in PDP. I've said that over time, and I'll say it anywhere. You want to do the right thing, you want to believe in zoning, like the seasonal example you brought, the right person the PDP would have given ticket should be the Igbos.
I agree.
Because they have served, not the South again, that just come back from the presidency. That shouldn't be. So if Wike has a program, what Nigeria expects at this level is you sell your program to the people. Tell us what you would do differently. Not to start your campaign the first day by taking jibes on people. That is not the kind of... I think that's why I say he will not provide a better atmosphere for campaign, because he will always be very confrontational.
Well, at this point, we have seen a lot of moves by Governor Wike in terms of fighting defection. It's a lot of cases in court and for sitting governors who actually defected from the PDP to the APC. Wike came up to say, owned up to the fact that he is involved. He wants the power back to
That is influencing the judiciary.
Not like he's influencing the judiciary. He's actually one of the persons that have charged them to court. He's following up on the case.
An interested party.
Yeah,
interested
very
party,
so
interested.
to say. But then
Okay.
that is also trying to say that those that defected, that's the three that actually came up, Tambuwal and Saraki and co, that came up to try to come up with a consensus candidate to run under the PDP. That he by his body language, he's open, he's vocal, he's not interested in people that switch parties as often as they please.
If you take Buba out, take Saraki out, take Tambuwal out, where will Wike get votes in the general election? This is not how to work these things out. That's what I'm saying. We need a peaceful country. At this stage in our life, we want people who are running for election to come up with policies and the thing they want to do, and not to come fighting. I've told you before that, like, people going to court getting judgment. My sister, you don't deceive yourself. Those judgments will not work until 2023 because they will follow it up to Supreme Court and we know how this thing work. And if we are just lucky that Buhari is not like some of the presidents we have had over time. If you go to court, the next thing you do, they will throw out the judge. Or they'll have the judgment, you still be where you are. So Wike is enjoying that advantage. And I'm not even sure that Wike will allow the advantage he's getting now. I am not sure. Going by his attitude, I don't think he will allow those things. You just get up one day and one judge is thrown overboard. So what I really want is this. If Wike want the party to grow, they have set up a committee in the first place. That's why I foresee a serious crisis in the PDP. You have set up a committee for zoning. Without waiting for the committee to come back with a report on zoning, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar went and bought form to run for the presidency. That itself has said. And I remember that during that gathering, Wike was already in that house. Prior to that, to the announcement, he walked out from that meeting. So you can now see that the party itself is already polarized between the North and the South. And it's not speaking well for the PDP as a party.
Well, there is another line of argument that
I'm coming because there is a game plan there. The day Atiku declared, Peter Obi was there. 2 days later, Peter Obi declared. If Atiku must have sympathy for somebody among those contesting, it should be Peter Obi. So if Wike will allow justice and equity to outplay by supporting the Igbo presidency, it will be easy for the PDP because the North will also look at it. Atiku will also look at it that some certain element over time he has run is been backed by the Southeast. So he will see a need. So instead, that's why I tell you we don't have a true kingmaker. So instead of Wike to run that, he should concede to the
that's where I'm coming to. That's where I'm heading to now. There's another line of argument that Wike might not necessarily be interested in the presidential race, but just trying to shield Alhaji Atiku because a lot of time they have tried several ways to get him not to, join the race this year. But regardless, he has gotten a form and he's been having town hall meetings, of which one held in Uyo here last week, Friday. Do you share that line of thought that Wike's declaration is in a bit to shield Alhaji Atiku from maybe having a chance in the PDP?
Well, the PDP had always have this thought of let's share. I don't know how many of them will be ready to. I don't know how many of them will be ready to ignore the dollars that will flow and do the right thing. Because if only they will ignore the dollars that will flow, I know governance in Rivers State will suffer. I see that. Then Atiku is a big war chest general, political general.
Financially too.
Yes. So I don't know. That is the war chest in Nigerian politics. So I don't know how many of them. Some people in South, some PDP bigwig in the South, like Chief Raymond Dokwesi, are strong backers of Atiku. So I don't know how long Wike will play the role of shielding. a governor, no politician. I don't trust advocacy of politicians because politicians are not meant to run for advocacy. They run for power. They seek for power. So when I see a politician pretending to be on advocacy, I see pretense, I see hypocrisy. The truth be told, I expected them to come up with, they should allow the committee on zoning to come up with whatever they are done. Not because the two parties are trying to push the party into crisis. The other day, the Southwest people met and said power should come to the South. Now, the other time, the South people met and said power should come to the South. And to large extent, the Southeast also want power to come to the South. They refuse to say which part of the South should this power come to. That is why I don't believe he's shielding Atiku. Because if he put his stand to say, Atiku, listen, I have the right to run, you have the right to run, but at this point, let us look at Southeast that have suffered so much for the party and have not been given the ticket. From there, if anybody comes up from elsewhere, the Southeast will have the sympathy and he will have backing. That's the kind of advocacy we want. You don't tell me that because you want to, somebody is hungry and you are holding the food, that the only way that person can eat and get well fed is when you export the food to the person. Okay, because along the way, what if you get hungry? In process of exporting that food, you get the aroma of the food.
So you now decide to eat the food.
You swallow. Won't you take advantage and eat it?
I think it's a nice way of explaining something.
Well, we're going to wrap up with this real soon.
Okay, but just before we wrap up, still hitting on what you said, Wike playing a spoiler for Atiku. In the political sphere, if you must negotiate, you need something in your hand. So, towing what she just said, would you not also still think that maybe Wike wants to have something in his hand? So when he's saying, okay, I'll not go, Atiku should not go. Okay, let's consider the South.
That's why I say if the South must have something in their hands. The South should come together and say, look, we are zoning this presidency there. That becomes the point of their negotiation. Because at this point, he will not be trusted. He will not be trusted. Now, if you also look at the structure of the party, I didn't come with that booklet. If I had early information now, I would have given you the structure of the party. And I want to tell you that the party is 50-50 in terms of them. And in terms of statutory delegates, people have voted before. Majority come from the other side, from the uptown. You see the implication there? So if you put election...
when you talk about statutory delegates, they just concluded APC National Convention. There was nothing like that. As people who were already holding public offices were not allowed to vote.
No, that's not what I mean by statutory delegate. People who had been senators, people who have been House of Rep member, House of Assembly member, all those ones are statutory delegates. And you have more up there than down here. So where this person has, this thing could be from the structure of the party. And you said something very pertinent. We need to drive away tribalism, ethnicity, for us to go far in our politics. And you won't count that out in this election.
Well, we need to drive away tribalism in our politics. Well, a good note there. Thank you very much, Mr. Victor Norma, for sharing your thoughts with us on the show. It was nice having you. And of course, we will always be looking forward to another conversation.
Thank you very much.